Welcome back to Techstrong Unplugged. My name is Cassandra Chen, and today we have Kevin Dubois with us here.
Hi.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Kevin Dubois. I'm a developer advocate at Red Hat. And I've been doing that for the last 2 years. And my background is in software engineering. I've done that most of my work life, my work career. Yeah.
And can you tell me a little bit about how you got started into technology?
Sure, yeah. So, of course, as a kid, I enjoyed playing video games and stuff like that, but wasn't necessarily looking for a career in IT because I didn't really like the idea of spending my whole life behind a desk. I always I picture myself, going places and doing stuff. Yeah, and then I did end up going to the university, and then we found this kind of university degree in Italy, which was kind of a combination between linguistics and computer science, because I also am passionate about language and linguistics. But then, yeah, I like to
Can you
play
tell me a
around.
little bit about what linguistics actually is?
Yeah, so it's basically the study of language, right? So in linguistics, you can learn about the history of languages, how they were created, how they evolved, and but also literature is part of linguistics, and then of course, studying actual languages as well.
We took computer science with linguistics. Was it kind of accidental or?
In a way. So to be honest, before I went to Italy, I also studied at the university in Belgium. Um, First, I did aeronautical engineering because I wanted to become a pilot, but I did some tests and my eyes weren't good enough, so I wanted to do something with airplanes. So I studied aeronautical engineering. Didn't quite work out. Then I completely changed to studying linguistics in Belgium for a little bit, but I didn't really like the university system in Belgium, and I wanted to go somewhere else. And so, because I had always, been, like playing around with computers and doing, some experimentation there, I was like, well, here's a course that kind of combines those two interesting subjects, and it seems like something to try out. So that's how I ended up there. And so, in a way, it was a little bit accidental how I ended up going into computer science that way.
You said that before you felt like computers were just like sitting in front of a screen all day.
Yeah.
How would you feel about it now?
Completely different. So I started learning about actual programming at the university, and because before I just like created some websites with HTML or CSS or whatever, um, and never really actually programmed. And once I started doing that, I was like, this is actually really fun. I really like this. And when I graduated, I moved to the United States. My wife's from the United States, and I got a job which was programming with Cold Fusion, which is really random. But I really enjoyed it, and it was literally, I mean, for the most part, sitting behind a desk.
Can you repeat that again? You said programming with cold fusion?
Cold Fusion, yes. So it's a really weird one. So it was using this IDE called Dreamweaver, and so it basically like embedded HTML and like the same XML kind of structure for the programming bits too. So it was a little bit funky. Like it made sense, but it like mixed, the front end and the back end kind of very like hard coupled in that. So I did that for a year, and then I started realizing like I don't know if this is a good direction for my career. So then I got more into, well, first I got another job where we worked mainly with PHP. Also didn't love that because it was a little too loose, and I had studied Java at the university, and that's where I really enjoyed, like the structure and the like the type safety of it all. So then eventually I got into a Java job and kind of never looked back from Java.
Is that your like happy spot, Java?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. It. I think especially the few years that I worked on PHP gave me really a sense of like um, working with developers who were not very disciplined, and we had to maintain those applications, and it was a mess because if you don't have the type safety and you don't have like the kind of the barriers in a way that Java provides, it can very quickly become a mess if you're not super structured in the way that you define you create your code, and that's something that always bothered me about working with PHP, and I like that about Java. You still have flexibility, but more like
It's more like railguards, so you don't spill
exactly.
over it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what are you doing now today?
So I'm now work as a developer advocate. So it's funny, I sit less behind my desk now. I mean, I still do, and I still write Java programs, but quite a bit less. Instead, I do a lot more public speaking about my experiences that I've learned over all those years working as a software engineer and as a lead software engineer and working with teams and especially about developer experience and how can we find a way to make developers happier in the sense that they can focus on being productive but in a fun way, right? Not to necessarily crank out more code or anything, but actually enjoy and feel that I'm not spending my time um, working on boilerplate kind of stuff, that I'm actually like creating something new. So yeah, it's
Do you still
actually
come back to coding sometimes?
absolutely, yeah. So I get to create demos, of course, for to kind of support my talks and to show like, hey, here's some cool stuff. And so we at Red Hat, we work only with open source, right? So I get to work with open source projects and kind of bring them together. I get to experiment a lot because like we are, like at Red Hat, we're working on a lot of experimental stuff in the open source communities as well. So I can be like the guinea pig to try out a lot of the stuff and provide feedback. So I create, like little applications here and there. The fun thing is that I don't need to support them on production anymore because it's just like, they need to work for my use case and my things, and sometimes a little more than that because we also create content and tutorials and labs and everything. So there they need to be a little bit more stable and maintainable, but for the most part I get the
It's really different because I think when you work for software engineering, sometimes your job is maintaining someone else's code.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. um, that's the reality, right? Is you go into a project and you see the code, and I mean, and to be honest, even if I look at my own code from a few years ago, I get the same kind of reaction, like, this needs to be done better, or why didn't they do it this way, or can I even read this code because it's just a tangled mess or something. I don't necessarily miss that part. I mean, I still get to experience some of that, especially working in the open source communities, and I also contribute to some projects. We see a little bit of it there, but yeah,
Are you involved in open source communities?
yeah. So I'm not like a core maintainer of any projects, but I contribute to, for example, to Quarkus or to Podman and Podman Desktop or to Knative. So bits and pieces here and there whenever I can. When I have time and when I can find something useful
What
to
kind
do.
of contributions do you make?
So like for example in Quarkus, it's usually when I try out something and I find that there's a piece missing or there's a bug or something, I'll try to trace through the code and see if I can fix it, or if I can add a new feature that addresses my need and my use case. So for example in Quarkus, in terms of serverless functions, I found that there were like you can create functions with Quarkus that you can deploy to Lambda, to Azure Functions, and to Google Cloud Functions, and to Knative in kind of the same way. I found that there were like some kind of differences between them, so I tried to make it a little more universal. Or in the CLI, there's a Quarkus CLI that you can also do a lot of the commands with in a more intuitive way than using Maven or Gradle. But there were also like bits and pieces missing, so I was like, oh, I can do that.
Do you ever feel like it's intimidating to like submit a change or suggestion to a really big project? Which
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So especially if you're not like day to day working on those projects, it's hard to come into those projects and feel like I'm doing it the way that they expect it to be, and then. But I think you need to be a little bit okay with the fact that you'll probably get feedback asking you to maybe change something or write it in a different way or something. And I think that's okay, but it is definitely intimidating, especially like I'm now a developer advocate, so I don't like write code on a daily basis. And so there's a little bit of that imposter syndrome, right? Like, maybe I'm losing my edge or something. And so I don't want to be judged for maybe writing it not in an optimal way or something. So, but I mean, I tried to get over that. And if they see that there's issues, then they can just tell me.
aside from just technology, do you have any other hobbies or like what do you do in your free time?
So in my free time, I try to not have like personal projects in terms of like programming or IT. I like to go outside. I really like the outdoors. So, I like to travel, which I can fortunately combine in my current role, but I also like the outdoors, and I like to go snowboarding or packrafting, which is something that I picked up over the last few years, where you basically just throw a little personal raft into your backpack and you go into the wilderness. And I mean, you do your research, you don't just go down random rivers, but like you can enjoy nature like that. So yeah,
It sounds like a lot of fun.
yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
And it's good to have that balance between like not always being in front of the computer.
Yeah. So I think it's important to sometimes disconnect and have something else in your life. It's really tempting to work a lot of hours, and admittedly, I catch myself doing that too, because like, oh, I want to finish this, and then oh, there's also that I want to do, and but I really feel regenerated after like just disconnecting for a while and going out in nature. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Maybe I should take more breaks from my computer.
Yeah.
I think we've had a really good chat today. So thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it. Thanks.